Hey, what's up? This is Chosen. I'm going to be joined by my friend and teammate, the originator of Diablo 4 hot takes. It is Veiled Shot, and we're here to talk about our previous tier list here on the channel that I had Veiled come along for because there was some dissenting comment section, madness coming after Veiled. I'm going to give him the chance to respond to some of the people that were criticizing the previous tier list, and then also we're going to see if we want to make any adjustments in this video just to keep things up to date. So let's get into it. Hey, what's up, Veiled? How you doing today, man?
Doing well, doing well. Just grinding Diablo, playing the game, enjoying the game, and I've been doing that for the last 2 weeks. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. How's it been going? You're are you in a pretty positive mind state overall? I feel like when the game came out, it was all sunshine and rainbows. I feel like the sentiment has gone a little bit more negative the last like 10 days or so, but I still think it's generally positive. Are you kind of where do you stand right now?
Oh well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I just recorded a video about this, but the Diablo 4 dads are taking over the community right now. They're blasting everyone saying that, guys, we just got to enjoy the game. We just got to have some fun. Probably because of the Father's Day and all that stuff. But if you look on Reddit, every post is like positive about the game and it's just playing casually. And I think also, if you actually talk about the real criticisms, they actually addressed a lot of them in the previous campfire stream. I feel pretty positive about the game. I don't have any real gripes yet.
I'd say maybe it was a little bit negative about the renown. I don't know if that was quite the answer people were looking for. And people are maybe looking for a little bit more in the end game, but like you said, for the casual players out there, that's not really a concern yet. We need to get some other stuff polished first, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I guess I would say the only thing that personally looking at is maybe some of the quality of life, making my life a little bit more enjoyable. I guess like less annoyances sometimes,
Reset the
like the
Paragon board with
inventory
one
and
click.
yes, yeah, that's probably the biggest one for me as well. Yeah.
All right, cool, cool. Well then, I've got the previous tier list that we did there on the board. Now I know you and me had disagreed a little bit, and I was kind of trying to put a consensus. But in terms of that board, if we were to just redo it quickly, give me like a 30-second rundown on what you would agree or disagree with, kind of on that like S for Barb, and then the Rogue and the Druid kind of there in the high mid, and then the Sork and the Necro kind of bringing up the back end.
Honestly, I don't really think much has changed. I think that you probably bump the druid up to S tier, honestly, behind the barbarian. I think that's really the only change that I would make. Mainly because I think that there are a lot of combinations that kind of have surfaced that really just are insane single target damage combos, which is something that the druid was kind of lacking beforehand. And with that in the end game or near the end game is they've bumped up a lot in my opinion. I think that's pretty much the only change I'd make. I think S for barbarian makes sense. A as the rogue, kind of the only tier or class in that position. And then you follow it up with sorcerer. And I think necromancer is definitely the worst class in the game in terms of like overall viability.
Okay, and I know that was a hot take as well. We had a lot of people disagreeing with that, but okay, let me pull up the first one. We've got a couple people coming at you here, Veiled, because if those of you don't know, Veiled over on his channel, he did start Diablo 4 as a rogue main. That was kind of his specialty. Veiled wanted to play the best class, of course, obviously, right? No. But anyway, we got people saying rogue easy S tier. The kid just doesn't want to say his class is OP, and wow, Rogue B tier. That Veiled was telling me to put Rogue in B tier in the previous video. He has no credibility. I will never trust his opinions ever again. Block channel. So, Veiled, would you like to defend your honor here in the comment section?
Well, I think we made this video. I was looking at the comment dates. It was about 10 days ago. So it was about a day or two after the game had been released. And you have to remember that at that time, I had already been like level 100. And in fact, I had already started my second character. And if most people that are playing the game hardcore had kind of maxed out the class. So we actually found out what these classes were like in the end game. And when I'm considering an overall ranking, the amount of time that I'm going to be putting into the game in terms of later on, it's going to be mostly end game content. And I think that's where Rogue really starts to lack. As I've said, if you look at Rogue and you consider it from the casual mindset, which is why I think that a lot of these comments have a lot of, I guess, say validity to them, which is that a lot of the perspectives that people are coming at this is like, yo, I'm seeing the rogue one-shot bosses. I'm seeing it dominate early game. I'm seeing it level way quicker than I am, moving the map quicker than I am. It can't be CC'd. You have permanent shadow step, all this great stuff about the rogue, and it's all true. But when you hit the end game, it's not that rogue gets worse per se. It's that the other classes get so much better that the rogue inherently drops, in my opinion.
Okay, and just to be clear with people, what do you consider endgame? When you say like when you get to the end game, what does endgame define?
So previously, I would have said like straight up level 100, pushing nightmare dungeons and doing that. But now with a lot of the changes that they've made, they've really reduced the kind of split farming, run and reset dungeon method. And with the changes they're making to nightmare dungeons, what I would consider end game is when you start to reach that like late game level grind, maybe like 90 plus, and you're farming out nightmare dungeons, and then you're eventually pushing nightmare dungeons. That's kind of what I consider end game at this point. So that means that you have to consider your sort of min-maxed build, your time you're spending in the game actually improving your character, which to be fair isn't actually a lot of the time that most people will spend into the game.
Okay, I've always kind of said that I consider endgame when you're above rank 50 sigils. Is that fair or?
Yeah, that's I would say that's a pretty fair. I would say that that's definitely um, more end game than most people would even think about. But I would personally say maybe like level 40 or so plus is kind of when you start to farm consistently at level 85, 90s is where I would put it.
Okay, cool. Then moving on to the next one, we've got Veiled Climb Rogue B to avoid nerfs. Shameless. That was actually the most upvoted comment, but we already kind of talked about that. So-
Yeah, I didn't succeed, guys. I got the rogue nerfed actually, because of the insane builds I was able to come up with. But yeah, the rogues got nerf after nerf after nerf on Twisting Blades. In total, two separate actual nerfs, and then a hot fix that really screwed us over. So didn't work, guys. Didn't work.
And then we've got horrible tier list. Rogue is top now, then Barb, then Druid, and then Sork and Necro, or Necro's way below Sork. So they're saying Rogue, then Barb, and then Druid would be top three. So they're just kind of taking the Rogue from number 3 and putting it above Barb. So I think you kind of explained why you wouldn't put the Rogue, because the Barb is going to scale better towards like the end game content, right?
Yeah, the thing is, like, I think that there's a fair argument to be had saying, yeah, Rogue is still S tier, but I don't think in any scenario you could ever put Barb and Druid below Rogue when Rogue has. If you look at the actual content out there and you look at the pushing capabilities, you have Barbs, you have Druids, like blasting through high tier nightmare dungeons, and yet with the Rogue, it is pretty difficult to almost impossible. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a tier 100 nightmare dungeon finish on the Rogue, whereas I've seen them with Druid and Barb decently easy. And so, if you want to say Rogue is S tier because they are significantly better than Sorcerer and Necro, okay, but then you got to put Barb and Druid above it. And so, to me, it kind of just makes sense by nature to drop the Rogue down to A or potentially B tier if you want to separate each tier.
Okay, cool. And then a couple more here. So this is a big one. I feel like they're way off on Necro. No need for mobility. I'm just face tanking everything and nuking shit in the end game. Necro has so much CC as well. I have yet to die once. I feel like the people that are putting it in the F tier, like Veiled did, Veiled's hot take was Necro is trash, put it in the F tier. Haven't really played enough of it to know how to play the Necro. So go ahead and respond if you'd like, Veiled.
So, my opinion of Necro has changed, but actually, even more further down because I've actually been playing Necro. I have a pretty high level Necro myself, and the mobility is absolute garbage, which we all knew that. Okay, regardless of what you want to say, if you want to say mobility is not bad, it doesn't matter if it's not bad because it's significantly worse than every other class. That's just like a fact of the matter. But the damage was always good, and that's what I said in that video. I said the damage was good, but when you're pushing end game, and again, when they say end game, I'm not quite sure they're talking about the same thing that we are. When I say end game, as I mentioned, it's like tier 40 Nightmare Dungeons plus, and in the end game, you need mobility or you need abilities to break CC. And if you look at any other class, each class has a better option to break CC than the Necromancer does. And the Necromancer has very limited options. One of the only options that it actually has is the Blood Mist trigger, which is a 20-second cooldown. If you compare that to a lot of other classes, for example, I'll take the Rogue. The Rogue has Shadow Step, which instantly breaks CC. You can have multiple charges of it. You can reduce the cooldown of it. And overall, being just slapped with CC over and over and over again is a very realistic way to constantly die. And coupled with the lack of mobility, you're going to struggle a lot. But there's one thing for certain, and that is the damage has always been good. It's always been good, and it's actually better than I even thought. It's just that the defensive options from Necro are so low that it's very difficult to really get some high value out of the Necromancer.
Okay, cool, cool. And then the last one I've got here, Necro is actually amazing. Maybe play it before you put it on a tier list. You've only ever really played Rogue. Is that true, Veiled? Have you only ever really played the Rogue?
I mean, I maxed every class in both betas, and I did play a little bit of the endgame beta. And in the endgame beta, I played the Rogue and I played the Necromancer. Those are the two classes that I played. And yeah, I mean, I even have a high level Necromancer right now. I think it's like level 70 something or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it is like anything between level 1 to 60 almost doesn't matter. In fact, even when we consider like Bar being trash or Druid being trash in the early game, yeah, it's bad, but it's actually not as bad as you might think. Like, you're able to crush content pretty easily. It's just that when you compare it to the above classes, that's where it feels really bad, right? And the same thing with Necromancer. Necromancer is not bad. It's very good in terms of DPS. But then when you play these other classes and see how well they can skate through dungeons, do more damage, and also potentially have so many more defensive options, you start to realize, okay, yeah, Necromancer by nature of the other classes being better is just, worse. It's kind of funny because not everyone has played every class to 100 yet, as far as I know. And so, yeah, you could say something like, oh, well, you haven't played the classes, but there's just like factual things associated with him, like the damage structure that you can acquire, or like the CC break potential that you have. And the Necromancer is just not really keeping up with some of the higher tier classes in that scenario.
Okay, great. Well, now let me pause for a second here, Veiled. I'm going to pull up the tier list. I'm just going to really quick do the updated version here to wrap up the video. So I'll be right back. Okay, and we are back. So I think if I have it right, Veiled, what you were saying was we're gonna go Barb and Druid in the S tier, right next to each other. Should we put anybody OP? Is there anybody that is like just so far above the other classes that they should go up into that OP tier, or is it just Barb and Druid and S?
It's hard to say because I think that you could argue that Barb should be in the OP tier, but it's actually that they might be OP unintentionally, so they constantly get hot fixed and bug fixed. I think S tier is proper for them, and anything that might be OP is just going to get bug fixed. So I think S tier is fine. I don't know of any class that's really broken right now.
Okay, cool. Barb maybe before they halved all their,
Yes.
yes, okay.
Yes.
So then maybe third, I think is pretty solidly solidified. Whatever is pretty solidly Rogue, right? So we'll put Rogue in the A tier.
Yeah.
Veiled, no more B tier. You're not gonna die in that hill, Veiled. You're off of it.
No, no. I think that, as I said, if I would have put Druid in A tier, like if I were to stagger them, because with the changes they made to Barb and all this stuff, I think Barb and Druid are similar power level, and I think Rogue is necessarily worse than Druid later on. But if Druid's in S tier, then I think Rogue fits right perfectly in A tier.
Okay, great. And then Sork and Necro, should they both be C, or is one definitively better than the other? Like, should Sork be in B and Necro in C? Probably something like that.
This was a tricky one for me because what I've realized with the sorcerer is that they really struggle in the end game survivability aspect, even more so than the rogue, for example. And like they purely rely on their immunizations and barrier, and it's just kind of odd because you could randomly kind of get one shot if you don't have permanent uptime, and it's kind of hard to keep permanent uptime. So I could hear an argument, and you're the sorcerer guy reaching almost level 100, I think. But I could hear an argument that both should be in C tier. or perhaps both should be in B tier, kind of wherever you think the power level of those classes are. I think that overall, with kind of how the game's shaped up, I think that they're solid, but yeah, they have some serious problems in the end game. So I think probably B tier is more likely.
Yep. Yeah. So I had to travel recently to California, so I was gone for a little bit. But yeah, I'm close to level 100. I'm in the 90s on sorcerer. And similar to you, I think I could be swayed by an expert in either direction almost. I would probably still put the Sork above Necro in B and then the Necro in C, simply because of mobility and CC break. I think if Necro had more mobility and more CC break, I would put them in the same tier. I'd probably put them both in B. But until because like on Sork, I can pop my flame shield and it's like a god tier get out of jail card. It buffs your movement speed, it breaks CC, everything. Teleport can break CC and move you around the map, and you can also lower the cooldown if you hit more enemies and stuff. So you have a lot more utility on the sorcerer than the necro, but the necro can do a ton of damage and it's maybe a little bit tankier. So yeah, I'm probably okay with sticking with the Sork in B and the Necro in C, and I kind of like our updated layout right here.
Yeah, I think that I think I would agree with that, and I'd be curious to see what the end game kind of shapes up to be, especially with the buffs that are coming. Because to be honest, um, tier list will probably get a full revamp in the next few days when they add all the different changes. They mentioned Necromancer is going to get some pretty nice buffs, so I'm curious to see where that's coming.
Yeah, that was always going to be my next class was Necro. I was going to do like Sork and Necro and lock it down. So we'll have to see. Well, on the way out, let us know what you're doing over on your channel and what your plans are kind of coming up. I know you just ordered a big revamp for your setup. Veiled's about to have insane audio quality. So yeah, let us know what's happening on your channel.
Yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out with the Diablo community, just pumping out some videos every day. My plan, actually, I'm playing every class, so we're moving on to the Necromancer. Everyone voted for it, which is kind of why I'm changing my opinion on Necromancer a little bit towards the direction of the no CC sucks, because I've been playing the Necro for the past couple days. I've also started a hardcore Barbarian. And I wanted to play through, see how that felt, and all that type of stuff. But yeah, we're just kind of playing, seeing how the season shapes up, and just checking out the news, which has been honestly pretty exciting, at least from my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I will link down below to Veiled Shots channel. Definitely head on over there and check it out. He is cranking out, what, about 50, 60 videos a month, covering everything.
That's right. 2 videos a day. Let's go.
Love it, love it. All right, Veiled. Well, I appreciate you joining me and hanging out, and I shall see you soon.
Peace.